have some really great characters. You have Duke from Turncoat, who is kind of like a superhero assassin who has delusions about how good he is at it. But you also have Anna, who's a burnout, taking a journey all across the universe. What is character development like for you guys?
We just find different types of neurosis and then build a character around that, I think. Because we tend to come up with like the plot and the idea and the story, and they can be quite a normal plot and story, and we think, okay, well, how can we take this an extra level above by having a really unique character on top of that? The idea that someone that kills superheroes for a living is a kind of a cool concept, but then we subvert it with the character being so shit at it. Or in Void Trip, the idea of a road trip through space is cool, but what if, again, they're not particularly efficient at trying to get to their goals? It's the sort of... We tend to like fallible characters, not necessarily villains, and not necessarily shades of grey, but I like the idea that they feel like they have a life off the page. They don't feel like archetypes, because a lot of comics is very genre fiction, and I like to move in a slightly more like literature-inspired way when we make stuff. So yeah, that's my approach to characters. I don't know what Klaus did.
So, in my opinion, like, characters are the most important thing in a story, and they're what people come back for, week after week on a television show or a comic book or whatever. So you really want to make them feel not only unique, but you want to make them feel authentic. I like to really build an entire story around a character, and I like to think about, what they had for breakfast. So Duke, for instance, probably had 3-day-old Chinese food for breakfast, whereas Anna probably starts the day off with 1 or 2 pieces of fruit just to get going, and then 3 more. Yeah. So, but also just like try to think of their world and like where they might have gone to even acquire their clothes, or what kind of friends they may have had outside of the comic. And the more you can kind of make this imaginary realm in your head and like make it feel real in your mind, then when it pours onto the page, the reader just can sense that there's like this large backstory to the character. And I think it gives them a sense of authenticity, that they actually live in a world that you've imagined, as opposed to just being these, like you said, archetypes. So I think when people read the books, that's kind of what they sense, is that Ryan's taken a character and made them act real, and then I try to portray that equally when I create the visuals. And I used to work as a concept artist, so for me it's like a really big deal to make them feel unique and interesting as well.
You guys have very different perspectives on things just because we're different. You're different people, that's just the way it is. Now, when you disagree on something, how do you handle a situation like that with like the story and the art?
We just don't talk for a few days, then call each other, argue, cry, usual creative stuff.
Eventually one of us will be like, all right, you're right. No, but usually what it is we're both trying to make the best story, the best book. So I think what it is whoever has a extremely relevant and logical reason and seems very passionate about their point of view for it, the other one will recognize that and say, okay, you're right, let's go with that, and then make it as good as they can. But also, a lot of what tends to happen instead is just more of a back and forth. Like, I've interpreted something one way, and Ryan's like, oh, I didn't think about it that way, but I still think this, and it becomes more of a building than a constant battle.
We're not sort of two separate creatives trying to fight for our spot. We've done 2 books together now, and the more we work together, the more we just become one sort of creative voice, if that makes sense. We don't really argue that much, and any time we do, it's always within the context of the work. So I don't think it gets heated, but if it did, immediately as we got a resolution, we'd be chill. So yeah, I mean, you've read Void Trip, we're chill guys. So mind you, you've read Fearscape as well, so maybe I'm neurotic. I don't know. Yeah, we're relaxed when it comes to this.
Its own magic. It's like, I just recently had a kid last year, and when the kid comes out, you realize it's completely its own living entity, and you're just trying to guide it and try to direct it a little bit. And I feel like with the work, it's the same way. Void Trip is a complete conglomeration of our 2 minds, and we both actually think differently about it, and we make it, which makes it interesting because the reader can kind of get messages and interpret things as a reader, as opposed to being like forced a message down their throat. It's sort of left open, but we're still trying to each say something. So yeah, I think it works great. I don't think we've ever had trouble with that.
I know that you guys, even though you've done a bunch of projects together, you're now working on separate things. Ryan, you have the Fearscape, and I know Plaid, you have Dead Planets. Is there anything you can tell us about it, or you want to tell us about your projects?
I miss you. a bit. Yeah, Fearscape is it's a 5-issue story with Andrea Muti and Vladimir Popov and Darren Bennett over at Vault Comics, and it is a deconstruction of story. And I don't want to talk about it because it's got lots of layers to it. I'd rather people just, if you're watching this interview, you probably like our stuff already, so just, if you've not read Fearscape yet, go check it out, and then we can talk. But yeah, even though it's out, I'm still trying to be cagey with it, because it just came out last week, so it's still new, and I don't want to start saying things that might make people... I'm playing with a lot of different things and a lot of different reader expectations, and I don't want to say anything that might make someone go down a certain path. So it's an incredibly hard book to be interviewed about, but I'm doing my best.
Honestly, Fearscape, it's one of those books where you pick it up, you start reading it, and you're kind of like instantly intrigued and hooked. And so definitely check it out. Dead Planets, for me, is just a story that I've had tumbling around in my mind like a brick in a washing machine for about 5 or 6 years. And I actually started the progression of it before Ryan and I started working together. And I put it on the back burner because, you know, his stories were so interesting. And started doing Turncoat, and it was like really fun. And then Void Trip, he pitched to me right after, and I was like, yeah, let's build this and let's start get it going. And so Dead Planets is just something where it's sort of like, I've been joking around, it's like Kiss wanting to take the makeup off just so that they can put it back on. So I think it's a nice way for me to just like get that writing thing out of me so that I can really focus on our next project, which I'm also really excited about. But I think it's like, for me as an artist, because of the hours of the artboard, you can really only put your mind to one thing at a time. So I just have to get that being out of me so it's out in the world, and then I can refocus on the next project.